In retrospect, it's 100% appreciative. I suppose I should have suspected something wrong the first time my wife came home from her first job at the art gallery, excited about a new visitor. But when you trust someone completely, and in all the 17 years we've been together, she has never once given me the slightest bit of trouble, your initial inclination is to give her a little break. My original wish was wrong. Very wrong. I'm Bobby Sprague, and my wife is Tracy. We met at a small Midwestern university 18 years ago, started dating 17 years ago, and married 16 years ago. We had a daughter 14 years ago and a son 12 years ago. I work as a computer programmer for a government agency. I make good money, but not a lot. I was earning well enough for Tracy to stay at home while the kids were small. But 2 years ago, she decided the kids were old enough for her to spread her wings and took a 30-hour job at a prestigious art gallery in the city. In college, Tracy had majored in art, so this was by no means a problem for her intellectually. She could say anything and go anywhere. The gallery primarily focused on clients who had a slightly better financial situation than we did. We live in a major city in the Midwest, and there were enough people with that financial situation for the gallery to have good business. And by virtue of her job, Tracy was able to befriend these people and dip into their world for a short time before returning home to her daily life. From time to time, we were both able to dip into their world, as sometimes Tracy would work on major exhibitions at the gallery and I would join her as a helper. I have to admit, it was exciting to spend a few hours in the company of influential people. Computer geeks like me don't often get to hang out with CEOs, politicians, lawyers, and bank presidents. So every once in a while, Tracy would come home in high spirits after meeting some celebrity or someone influential. My kids and I admired the way she just fluttered around the house for a while, and then we stopped bothering her when she realized the place we had in her life. Gloominess was not one of Tracy's best qualities. The kids usually scattered to their rooms, very often leaving me to listen to her sarcastic comments about our lives for the rest of the evening. Most of the time, I just took it for granted. When it got to me, I was fiddling with my car in the garage. So for the past few weeks, Tracy had been chattering non-stop about some prominent real estate professional who had recently become a patron of the gallery. Jackson Aloysius Fairchild, a 28-year-old millionaire, had recently moved into an expensive new apartment and, according to Tracy, wanted his walls decorated with artwork reflecting his position in life. He seemed to impress her in general, although she expressed the thought that he also seemed to be somewhat pleased with himself. She mentioned in various conversations that he was handsome and well-built, and often talked about various physical activities such as cycling and rock climbing. Tracy's enthusiasm about a new client was not unusual, so I didn't pay much attention to it and let her babble on and on for the next 2 weeks. Then that subsided too, as I'd expected. I never heard another word about Jackson Aloysius Fairchild until I was introduced to him at the gallery's Christmas gala just a few weeks before the holiday. I must admit that he was an impressive physical specimen, about 185 centimeters tall, and looked like a rock in his expensive Armani suit. He was also blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and extremely handsome, even to my precocious eye. I wasn't expecting that at all. I talked to him for about 30 seconds while Tracy introduced us to each other, and in that short time I noticed that he was scrutinizing my wife from head to toe like a tiger scrutinizes its prey. Yes, she was gorgeous this evening in her blue skirt and tailored jacket. A small neckline was visible from beneath the white blouse, but there was more slyness than admiration in his gaze. Tracy seemed too preoccupied with everything going on to pay attention, but I did. Tracy went to socialize and I headed to the bar. I ordered myself a Jack Daniels on the rocks and found Kenny Taylor, the husband of one of my wife's co-workers, whom I had met before and with whom we got along very well. We talked a lot about sports and cars. I talked to Kenny for a while and then did a little socializing myself. After about an hour, I noticed Tracy talking to a small group of people, and Jackson Aloysius Fairchild was snuggled up to her with his whole body. I walked over to the bar, grabbed her favorite drink, and approached the company. I introduced myself and handed Tracy her glass of wine. I then quietly reached up to Tracy's right thigh and removed Jackson's hand that was resting on her back. He didn't say a word, only smirked at me as he returned my hand to his body. I talked to the group for a few minutes, and then Tracy left to socialize some more. I walked in the other direction, making sure beforehand that Jackson wasn't following her. I expected to see Tracy minding her own business while I hung around the house, socializing with her co-workers, but after about an hour, I didn't see my wife anywhere. Quickly looking around a second time, I didn't see Jackson either. My spidey instincts were heightened, so I made every effort to find Tracy. I didn't find her in the gallery, so I went out the front door and started circling the building. There were small groups of people in the parking lot, talking without taking off their coats and looking like they were about to leave, but Tracy was still nowhere to be seen. And then I noticed a couple who seemed to be quite cozy in a black Jaguar XJ. The car was started and the couple were huddled tightly together in the back seat. I didn't bother to check to see if it was Tracy and Jackson. I assumed it was, walked over to the car and opened the door next to the woman. The passengers recoiled as they did so all I could figure out was that if they weren't kissing, they were close to it. "Time to go, honey." "Now," I said in my best polite but firm tone. We just," Tracy stammered as Jackson smirked at me. "I don't really care. It's time to go," I said in almost a whisper. "Really, Bobby, you should come in and listen to that sound system," Jackson said. "It's just crystal." The stereo system was on and some concert music was playing, but I don't think either of them were listening to music. "Another time, Jackson. We really should get going," I said in my most indifferent voice. I led my wife out of the car and we headed over to where my Ford F-150 was parked. "Wait, but I can't leave yet. The party will go on for another 2 hours. I'm supposed to stay here the whole time and be one of the hosts," Tracy said with insistence in her voice. "If your boss has a problem with that, he can call me directly," I said. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" "We were actually listening to the sound system in his car. It's amazing," she said with a note of awe in her voice. "Uh-huh," I replied without a trace of awe in my voice. Tracy continued to feign innocence, and for the next couple weeks things were quiet between us. Eventually, I calmed down and things returned to our normal existence, so that a few months later I was completely surprised when Tracy told me that she had accepted an invitation to visit Jackson's cottage on the lake for the 4th of July weekend. It was to be us, Tracy's boss, his wife, and 2 other married couples who were friends of Jackson's. We were going to arrive Friday afternoon and be there until Sunday afternoon. Jackson was grilling both days with a full bar, swimming, boating, and whatever else was available. I started to protest, but Tracy just said we were going, turned around, and walked away from me. The weekend actually started out great. We spent several hours on the lake on Jackson's rather large sailboat. The women all looked great in their bikinis, and the guys at least didn't look so bad in their baggy suits. Truth be told, Jackson probably had the best physique of the 5 guys there. Though thankfully, it wasn't like he was better built than the rest of us, and Tracy, despite being the second oldest of the 5 women, was probably the best built in terms of figure. Her black bikini showed off her breasts and firm ass, it seemed to me, without leaving too much to the imagination. Jackson had a great grill in the backyard of his cottage, and even the refrigerator was fully stocked with beer, wine, and ice for cocktails. He brought out some marinated steaks and started laying them out on the grill while everyone settled into chairs next to the grill with drinks of their choice. Jackson was a gracious host and still didn't care for Tracy, who seemed to be staying a little farther away from him than she had at Christmas. The night went wonderfully, and around midnight we all dispersed to our bedrooms, and Jackson, as the only single person, went to the master bedroom. Saturday began with a visit to a small town located on the shore of the lake. It was a little tourist trap with lots of cute stores, and most of the women came home with a few purchases. We then ate a sumptuous lunch of sandwiches before heading to a volleyball game. The libations started after we were done with that activity, and we had sausage and pulled pork for dinner. We enjoyed another great dinner, and after sitting around for a couple hours doing nothing, Tracy's boss, Lou, suggested that he and I take a walk around the lake. With all we all ate and drank, I thought it was a great idea to get ready for round 2. It took us about 30 minutes to walk around the lake, and when we got back, the group was already spread out around the table in chairs and lounge chairs. I wasn't too happy when I saw Tracy sitting in a chaise lounge, leaning back against Jackson, who had his arm around her waist. As we approached, Tracy smiled and got off Jackson, but she didn't seem to be in too much of a hurry, even though she must have known I wouldn't be too pleased. She never once really looked me in the face, but came over and sat in the chair next to me for most of the rest of the evening. Several times during the evening, I caught her and Jackson's glances when they thought I couldn't see. Like the night before, the party started to wind down around midnight, but as the other 3 couples started to disperse to their bedrooms, Tracy quietly asked me to join her in the kitchen. When we got there, she looked me straight in the eye for the first time all evening and announced, "Jackson has asked me to sleep in his bed tonight." I accepted his offer. I must have blacked out and hit my head because I thought Tracy had just told me that she was going to sleep with Jackson in his bed. I looked at her like she had 3 eyes, and she realized I wasn't quite sure I'd heard her correctly. "This has nothing to do with love. This is purely about sex, Bobby," she began. "I've been completely faithful to you for 17 years, and you're the only man I love. But I want to have sex with Jackson. He turns me on, and I want to see how another man feels. After tonight, I will be your faithful wife again for the rest of your life. But I think you owe me one night." I don't know how long I stood there with my mouth open. My wife just told me she's going to sleep with another man because that's what she wants, and I owe her that. "Only over my fucking dead body will you sleep with him," I finally blurted out. "This isn't a negotiation, Bobby. Accept it for what it is. Today I belong to him. Tomorrow, and for the rest of my life, I'll be yours." "Don't be so sure of that, sweetheart. Remember, every action has consequences." "Damn it, Bobby," she whispered to me. "Do you have to see everything so black and white? It's just one night, for God's sake. One night, that's all. And you're going to ruin it for everyone? One night. We never realized you were so uncooperative. I probably should have just kept my mouth shut and gone behind your back. But I was afraid that if you found out about it, it would definitely end things between us. So I thought that if you found out and let me go, it wouldn't be cheating." She turned on her heels and walked away. As I walked out of the kitchen and into the living room, I saw Tracy take Jackson's hand and head toward the master bedroom. I think the blurring of my vision was due to the tears rolling from my eyes. I walked over to the bar indoors and poured myself a whiskey. It took me about 5 minutes to finish it, and when I did, I made my way to the master bedroom and stood outside the door very quietly. I could hear the sounds of 2 people having sex. My life as I knew it was over. I drank several shots of whiskey trying to figure out what I was going to do next. My first impulse was to leave as soon as possible and file for divorce. But the thought of having to be separated from my children for a while didn't suit me. I didn't see anything good in that decision for me or for them. On the other hand, my wife was in another man's bed at that very moment, so I knew I just couldn't accept it. I had the thought of burning the house down and killing us all, but sanity overcame me. Then I think I blacked out for a while, because when I looked at my watch, it was 3 in the morning, and the house was quiet. I staggered my way to the bedroom that Tracy and I had been assigned. The bed was still made up because it was empty, just as I had assumed it would be. I laid right on top of the covers and slept snatches for the next few hours, getting up at 7:30. I made my way to the adjoining bathroom, took a quick shower, and brushed my teeth before heading to the kitchen. The other 3 couples were already up and eating breakfast of scrambled eggs and bacon. Marna, wife of Tracy's boss, Lou, was apparently the head cook, and she offered me a plate while the others muttered, "Good morning." It was obvious by the way everyone was looking at me obliquely that they knew exactly what had happened. I know my face was flaming because the humiliation level was off the charts. "It's okay, Bobby. We've all seen it before," Marna said sympathetically, while the others nodded in agreement. "Jackson's done it 3 or 4 times now. He's an alpha male, and when he sees what he wants, he gets it. It's just the way he is. I also tend to think he really likes to humiliate others, and I think women get that too," Lou added. "But I don't think there's anything personal about it. It's just the way he is." "So what happened to the other couples he did this to?" I inquired. "Well, as far as I know, they're still married. When it comes down to it, it seems silly to ruin a marriage of many years over a one-night stand," Marna said. "Especially when it comes to the kids and everything else," added Joanna, one of the other wives. "You mean he's looking for married women with kids so the wives can use the kids as leverage for an affair?" I asked incredulously. "That seems to be the case," Ralph, Joan's husband, interjected. "But he's actually a nice guy, except for one little oddity. I've known him since college, and if you're his friend, you've got a friend for life. So I can forgive his one quirk, especially since it doesn't seem to hurt couples in the long run. In fact, I know that last year, Jackson made a lucrative deal with his latest couple and her husband for a condo in North Carolina. Jackson can stay with them whenever he happens to be in the neighborhood." Just then, we heard some moaning coming from the master bedroom. It was Tracy, and I realized from the sounds that last night's time spent with Jackson obviously included this morning. Everyone at the table blushed with embarrassment, and I turned white with rage. "Why don't we have breakfast on the terrace?" Marna suggested. Tracy and Jackson joined us on the terrace about 30 minutes later, showered and looking very pleased with themselves. I had to admit that Tracy was just glowing and didn't seem to be too secretive about everyone knowing what she had just been doing. She was holding a plate of breakfast and immediately walked over to the chaise lounge I was sitting on. She sat down on the edge of it while I spread my legs for her. She had her back to me at this point, but I could see how pink her back was from under her tank top. I could also make out something that looked like a bite mark on her right shoulder, just under the straps of her tank top and bra. She didn't say hello to me, just nodded as she sat down, and I saw no reason to break the silence. "What's everyone's plans for today?" said Jackson in the tone of a cordial host. "I think we should go back and give the kids some attention. Don't you, honey?" I said to Tracy's back. She hesitated for a second, and from the way her hair and head moved, I realized she was rolling her eyes at my words. It's just one of those things you know when you've lived together as long as we have. Since she was sitting facing everyone else, they could all see her rolled eyes, and it took everything in my power not to reach out and slap her on the back of the head. "I was hoping we could stay a little longer and maybe go sailing again, honey," she replied firmly. "No, we should definitely get back. You finish your breakfast. I'll load the car. We'll leave in 10 minutes, I said, as I headed back to the house. I loaded the car in record time. Tracy was just finishing breakfast when I returned to the porch. I grabbed her wrist, waved to everyone, hurriedly said goodbye to the rest of the company, and practically dragged Tracy to the car. I didn't need to look anyone in the eye to know what they were thinking. I knew, because I was already thinking it. For the first 45 minutes, except for the radio playing, we drove in silence, and Tracy mostly stared out the passenger side window. I think she was afraid that if she looked straight ahead and I could see her face, an explosion would start, so she just looked away from me. In the end, I couldn't take it. Was it worth it? I half hissed and half spoke to her. She didn't move for a couple seconds, and then I saw her take a deep breath. She turned toward me. Yes. Yes, it was. It was wonderful, she murmured with an absent look. Not exactly the answer I was expecting. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I hadn't expected her to tell me the awful truth. Perhaps I expected her to stammer, to tell some truth, to backtrack, perhaps apologize, but not the whole truth. And from the look on her face, I knew it was indeed the truth. 17 years, 2 kids, everything we'd built together, and all that in one night? I asked. She turned a little more toward me in her seat and cast a sad, almost resigned look at me. "It's up to you, Bobby," she said. "As I promised you, it was just for once, and now I will belong to you as devotedly as I did before last night. It was an amazing night, and now it's over. But if you can fall out of love with me so quickly and destroy our family, then you'll do what you have to do. But trust me, I'll take the kids and make sure they know you ruined our family." I was stunned into silence, not even an apology. And she'd blame me for breaking up our family? She and Jackson must have planned the whole thing. I'd never seen that side of Tracy before, and I definitely didn't like it. "So can I assume that having sex with Jackson this morning was a calculated act, done because of the humiliation factor?" I asked. "Not exactly. He wanted to sleep with me one more time before I became my husband's faithful wife. He was willing to live by my rules. We stopped by Tracy's parents' house to pick up the kids. When we arrived, I felt like nothing had changed for Tracy. Even though I got along great with Tracy's parents, Ron and Judy, I could barely look them in the eye. I felt that somehow they had found out that Tracy had given me horns, and I was ashamed and hurt. I wanted to shout out the truth about their daughter, but I realized this wasn't the time or place. Tracy had a puzzled look on her face the whole time we were there. She was definitely enjoying my discomfort and the fact that she was gaining the upper hand. This was definitely the wrong way to make amends, I thought to myself. Tracy got into bed after me at the end of the evening. I lay with my back to her, and she climbed in and settled behind me. Then I felt her arm come around me. "It's not going to happen tonight," I said. "There's not a damn thing you can do to make me horny for you. You'll just have to settle for what that asshole gave you last night and this morning." For the first time since Saturday night, Tracy showed weakness. She looked hurt and shocked by my rejection of her advances. It was one of the few times in our lives together. "But don't you want me back? Jackson says it's almost an automatic reaction for men in these situations." "Oh, now he's saying that? So not only is he a real estate genius, he's also a sexologist? Well, then he should have warned you that some men don't see what you did as a sexual challenge. Some of us see it as a total betrayal, and vomiting may be more justified than sex." Tracy's eyes opened even wider than they had before. Never in all the 17 years we'd been together had I spoken to her like that, and never before had I swore at her. She pulled her hand away, so I rolled over onto my other side and pretended to sleep. I heard her crying softly. I didn't care. The following week, I made an appointment with a respected divorce attorney. The meeting did not go well, to say the least. Marcus Rothstein had to explain to me twice that my options were actually limited. Either give up half my shit and my kids, or wait it out for the sake of the kids, and then give up half my shit if we divorced when they reached adulthood. We all know parents who live their lives for their kids, and then when the kids leave home, the parents really have nothing else in common and get divorced. This was essentially the scenario my lawyer laid out for me. Be a good parent for the next 6 years, and then divorce Tracy as soon as the kids are no longer an issue. At least in my case, I didn't have to worry about Tracy running around the neighborhood if she was telling me the truth about keeping her promise. Here's what I did. If my kids were involved in an activity, I was usually the responsible parent and made sure Tracy was involved too. Why should I be the only one who has to attend a philatelic club fundraiser or work on a 4-hour woodworking project? We were the parents that everyone looked up to and shook their heads at. As for physical intimacy, I didn't touch Tracy sexually for 6 months until she told me she would have to have fun on the side if I didn't want to fulfill my marital duties. Since I was ready to go off the rails myself, literally, I was able to convince myself that I could have sex with Tracy the same way she had with Jackson, Just sex and nothing else. After all, she was still a beautiful woman. Not that I was being forced to have sex with a troll. It wasn't pleasant, but our first night set the tone for what was to come over the next few years. We had a date at one of our favorite Italian places, and I treated Tracy to 2 more glasses of wine than she usually had. Since she hadn't had sex in the last 6 months except with her favorite toy, she was a little more horny than usual, and when I suggested she go to bed while the kids watched a movie, she didn't even hesitate. As we undressed, we looked like 2 horny teenagers. We then lay together for about 10 more minutes before we broke away from each other. "Where the hell did that come from?" she whispered to me. "Holy shit, Bobby! Do I really have to wait another 6 months for a repeat performance?" I couldn't really answer that question, so I stayed silent and stared at her back. I had to admit that every time I thought about Tracy with Jackson, I went ballistic, and there was nothing tender about our lovemaking back then. Hell, it wasn't even lovemaking then, it was pure sex. However, she seemed happy with what was going on and never complained, although we rarely cuddled or talked gently afterward as we had before the incident. Things seemed to be back to what I assumed was going to be the new normal for us, but for 1 week each month I had a private investigator follow her around just to make sure she kept her word to me and wasn't dating Jackson, or anyone else for that matter. I spent a lot of money to calm things down a bit. 6 years later, our youngest son, Terry, left to attend college at Michigan State. Melissa was in her penultimate year at the University of Michigan, so when Terry made his decision, we had a little war between the kids for an entire summer before they both separated to their respective schools. Since Terry was a freshman, he lived in an on-campus dorm, and Tracy and I helped him move in the week before school started. Neither Tracy nor I remembered taking even half of what Terry took with him. We drove him to Michigan State on Thursday and stayed most of the weekend before finally leaving home late Sunday night. Exactly 30 days later, on Tuesday afternoon, I called both kids and quietly but nonchalantly informed them that I was divorcing their mother because she had cheated on me with another man several years ago. They were both desperate. "You two," I thought, "were so good together. How could this have happened?" Melissa practically screamed into the phone. "I always thought we were good together too, but your mother cheated on me with Jackson Aloysius Fairchild 6 years ago when we were there with a few other couples for 4th of July weekend. She told me she was going to do it openly so she wouldn't act sneaky behind my back, and then told me she would remain faithful to me for the rest of our life together. She didn't take it as cheating, but I did, and told her then that I wasn't going to put up with it, that there would be consequences if she went through with it. But apparently she and Jackson had planned it, and she told me that if I left her, not only would she get half of our property, but she would get both of you, that she would turn you both against me. I couldn't lose the 2 of you, so I gave in and just put up with it until you both came of age. I was sure you would understand." Terry spoke first. "I'll be damned," he exclaimed. "Did she give you any reason why she started this shit? Other than she just wanted to have sex with a man she found attractive? Nothing much. She just figured I'd give in so I wouldn't lose you two, and in a way, she was right." "Is she still hooking up with anyone, Dad?" Melissa asked. "Not as far as I can tell, baby," I replied. "One of my private investigators has been following her around a week a month since then, and as far as he can tell, she's kept her promise and hasn't cheated." "Then why can't you forgive her, Dad?" Terry asked, uncertainly. "You've been married for what, 22 years, and she's only done it once." "Once was more than enough, Terry," I said, trying to hold back my growing anger. "What love did she feel for me when she spent the night in bed with another man? What respect did she show me when she had sex with him the next morning and we could all hear them doing it? I'm sorry, kids. I don't have the guts to forgive her. I stayed with her to keep the family together. I love you guys." "Thanks, Dad. We really appreciate you helping us stick together," Melissa replied. "Does she know yet?" Terry asked. "She'll know in just a few minutes. She will be served at 4 o'clock in her office." "Dad, that's a bad move," said Melissa. In front of her boss and co-workers, she'll be crushed and humiliated. Don't do this to her, Daddy. It's too late, baby. Besides, I planned it that way on purpose. Her boss and his wife were among the other people at the lake house when it happened, and if you think I wasn't humiliated enough as it was, imagine how I felt when your mother started moaning the next morning while having sex with Jackson. I wanted to cower and die. So no, I really want her to feel the pain of humiliation. While I don't agree with that, Daddy, I think I understand it, Melissa replied. I agree, Daddy. I totally support you, Terry interjected. My cell phone rang at 4:07. Yeah, I answered. I'm going home now, motherfucker, and when I get there, I'm going to kick your ass for the next week, Tracy yelled into the phone. I was betting on remorse and tears. I just want to show you what I know, I replied before ending the call. I sat in the living room watching TV until I heard the garage door open and Tracy's car pull into the yard. I turned off the TV and stood up. If she was going to attack me, I wanted to be able to defend myself. I had never hit a woman before, but I was going to do it if I had to. As usual, Tracy came in through the back room and she looked like she was on fire. She headed straight for me before I turned slightly to the right so she couldn't kick me in the balls with her right foot, which was her kicking leg. It's an old fighting move. I raised both hands in a protective stance as well. At this point, Tracy stopped, looked me over from head to toe as if trying to think of a punch, and then collapsed on the couch in tears. I thought we were good. I thought we were fine, she mumbled. In all these years, you never once said you were going to divorce me. You wanted to, and that's why you thought we were fine, I said calmly. But I kept my promise. I hadn't slept with anyone since Jackson at the lake, and I wasn't going to sleep with anyone else. You kept your promise, but 16 years before that, you made a vow to me that you just threw in the trash that night. I told you not to do it then, but you were going to do it anyway and threatened me that you were going to take my children. I couldn't let you do that. So you ordered me to be serviced in the gallery in front of Lou and all my co-workers? How could you be even more cruel? She wheezed. I felt that Lou's presence only completed the circle you began at the lake house 6 years ago, and it's so cruel. The way you screwed us all in the house Sunday morning was the most humiliating moment of my life. You can rest assured I got my revenge. Tracy continued to sob, but I saw a look of understanding appear on her face. 6 years ago, you told me that you thought sleeping with Jackson Aloysius Fairchild was worth it. That it was wonderful. Do you still think that now? But I kept my promise to you. I've been faithful to you for over 6 years since then, she whimpered. So what's the point of breaking your promise? I answered quickly. If your vow was only valid for 16 years, would your promise be valid for half of that? Say 8 years? Bobby, I am truly sorry if this incident leads to our divorce, but I told you about it. I didn't cheat. Yes, you did, I insisted. Just because you told me about it in advance instead of acting secretly from me doesn't make it right. We didn't discuss it. You discussed it with him. That's not what we agreed. That's what you agreed with him. And then, you broke your vows to me. You regret the divorce it caused, but you don't regret what you did. You never regretted what you did. I didn't give you a pass to cheat. We didn't come to some agreement that you could have someone else. You just gave yourself permission and decided that I would accept your idiotic decision. You broke my heart that weekend, Tracy. And on the way home, you told me it was my problem. That I had to deal with it or you'd take my kids. That sounds like love to you, because it definitely doesn't to me. She just looked at me stunned. Tracy got herself a good lawyer, and he convinced the judge that we needed couples counseling. At the very first session, the counselor, a pretty young woman in her early 30s, asked me why I thought I couldn't get over how Tracy had cheated on me just once, especially since she hadn't slept with Jackson behind my back. I looked at her like she had 2 heads, and then asked if she had ever been married, not noticing the rings on her left hand. My marital status has nothing to do with your answer, Mr. Sprague, she said, more than excusing herself. Completely wrong answer, I said, getting up to leave. As I left, both women sat motionless. Later that evening, I received a phone call from Ron and Judy, Tracy's parents. I loved Tracy's parents very much. My own parents had died a few years before, and since their deaths, I had grown even closer to Ron and Judy. They sincerely reciprocated my affection, but I knew they had to be on their daughter's side in this matter. That's exactly what parents do. I hadn't spoken to them since Tracy's paperwork had been delivered a few weeks ago. They were both on speakerphone. After an exchange of pleasantries, Judy started the conversation. "Bobby, why are you being so stubborn?" she asked. "You know Tracy loves you with all her heart. You know she kept her promise to you to never have sex with anyone else. Why do you have to be so uncooperative?" "What exactly did she tell you about that weekend?" I asked. "Well, honey, she told us that you two talked about her sleeping with some guy for one night, and then promising to be faithful to you for the rest of her life. She told us that she told you everything instead of acting secretly from you like she could have because she really loves you and doesn't want to lose you. That's about half the story. You two sitting down?" "Say what you need to say, Bobby." "We're sitting down," her father replied succinctly. "We didn't arrange for her to have sex with Jackson Alicius Fairchild. She and Jackson made an arrangement. I was told. I was told that I had no say in the matter, that it would happen on its own. And if I wanted to make a fuss, she would take the children and turn them against me. I warned her not to do that, but it didn't change a damn thing. Anyway, they had fun that night, and just to make sure, they had fun again in the morning. We all sat in the living room until your daughter got too rowdy and we went out to the backyard. I had never been so humiliated in my life until on the way home, Tracy told me how great the sex was. Does that sound like what a loving wife says? Does that sound like a woman who really cares about her husband? It doesn't sound like that to me." "But you stayed with her for another 6 years," her father said. "No, I stayed with my children for another 6 years. And after a while, I even went back to your whore daughter. But love. That night, the love began to fade, and every day it grows less and less. I will never love her the way I once did." I heard Judy crying. "I'm sorry, son. We didn't know the whole story," Ron said. "We should have realized that it would have been worse for you if you had just walked away. Thanks for staying with us all these years for the kids." Tracy and her attorney did everything they could to slow down the process, and the divorce took about a year. I don't know, maybe Tracy figured I would lose the will to fight and just stay married. She should have known that wasn't going to happen. Although I didn't realize it at the time, being an active parent as my children grew up really kept me grounded in the community and also gave me a glimpse into the personal lives of some of the other parents. I got to know a lot more divorced people in my age group than I usually do, and I used that knowledge to my advantage when my divorce finally became official. I took day trips or went to a restaurant and dance club on the weekends, and I almost always had an interesting conversation partner. Many of them were divorced mothers of friends of my children's friends, and others were friends of friends. I guess the old adage that if one wants one will find one was true. I actually had more sex and more partners than I had before I was married. Life wasn't so bad if you ignored the hole in my heart that Tracy had left. After the divorce, I moved into a 3-bedroom apartment because I wanted my kids to have a place where they could stay with me if they wanted to. I know they were mad at Tracy at first after the divorce, but I figured they would eventually get over it and maybe split time between us until they moved out for good. For their sake, I hoped that she and Tracy would come to some sort of agreement, but I wasn't going to broker that deal. Tracy had done wrong to all 3 of us, and I wasn't going to try to bring her back into the children's lives. While it didn't surprise me that both kids had chosen to live with me during their college vacations, what surprised me most was how quickly Tracy's parents had returned to the family. I heard very little from them during the court proceedings, which I was quite aware of, But about 2 months after the divorce became official, Judy called me and asked if I could meet her and Ron for dinner at a nice Italian restaurant in our town. Considering how well we had gotten along before the divorce, I saw no reason to refuse, and the three of us had a great evening. The evening started out awkwardly, as Ron and Judy apologized for both Tracy's behavior and any animosity that may have arisen from their support of her. At least until they knew the rest of the story, so to speak. I told them that the apology was accepted, and I understood that they were supporting their daughter. I then asked them if we could change the subject, and from that point on, the evening went better, despite the occasional comments and tears about what might have been. Having Ron and Judy back in my life brought back a sense of normalcy, and I think they enjoyed my company as much as I appreciated theirs. We rarely talked about Tracy, except maybe when we were reminiscing about one event or another from the past. We got together probably a couple times a month while the kids were at school, and when they came home, we spent even more time together. It was only a matter of time before I invited a sixth person to our little get-togethers. Amy and I started dating about 18 months after the divorce. By then, I was already dating someone, and not really looking for the right girl when Amy and a few of her friends walked into the restaurant where the kids and I were having dinner Saturday night. She and 3 of her friends were seated just one table over from us, and while I wasn't paying much attention to them, my kids were top of mind for me. "Dad, see those women who just sat down?" Melissa asked in a low voice. "They're all beautiful, and none of them have wedding rings." "Jesus, Melissa, I don't need you to be my matchmaker," I replied. "She's right, Dad. There's a lot of excitement at the table," Terry added. I looked around. The kids were right. "Shit. Maybe I do need you as my assistant," I said to Melissa. We finished dinner. I was driving, so I gave my car keys to Melissa and told the kids I'd find a cab home. Then I walked over and introduced myself to the lovely ladies at the table, who quickly invited me to join them. I sipped a rare Eagle bourbon while they ate. "What? Did you abandon your kids to flirt with us? What kind of father are you?" asked the long-haired blonde Jennifer, who sat at the round table. "I'm a father who knows his kids have good taste, so when they pointed out that 3 of you didn't have wedding rings, I had 2 choices. Go home to watch the baseball game and listen to these same kids beat the crap out of me, or maybe come here making a complete idiot of myself, but at least get more respect from the kids. And I've always been told that it's just as easy to love a beautiful stepmother as an ugly one." "Oh, wow. Wow, big guy. You've got a thing about you," said the married brunette. "Not a jerk, just a confident guy with 2 smart, chatty kids. And, might I add, good taste. So you're the boss of this place, huh?" They all giggled, and even Rose, who I was picking on. "But for that, big guy, you have to tell your story to the class first," she replied with a smile. I told the 4 near strangers my life story, quickly recounting my 17-year marriage and subsequent divorce. "Not good enough, Romeo. If you're such a great guy, how come your wife ran away from you?" asked Angelica, a goddess with hair the color of a crow's wing. "There are 3 of us here who have already been divorced, so we want to know ahead of time if we should even waste our time talking to you." "Straight up. I like that," I replied. For the first time since I got divorced 2 years ago, I told my whole story, even the most painful parts. Up until that point, the only people who knew the whole story were Tracy's parents and my divorce attorney. When I finished my story, there was an awkward silence in the room. I saw tears in everyone's eyes. Heck, I had tears too. "Well, that's one way to lighten the mood," Carol said, touching my right hand. "I'm sorry, ladies. I try not to dwell on the past. Look on the bright side. I have 2 great kids, and my father-in-law and mother-in-law aren't so bad either." "Your father-in-law and mother-in-law? You've got to be kidding," Angelica exhaled. "Now you're pushing the boundaries of my understanding. Nobody likes their in-laws on their wife's side, especially after a divorce." "What can I say? I'm special. If you girls are done eating, the drinks are on me." "It's my turn to hear your stories," I said. We sat like that for another 3 hours until I heard everyone's story. Jennifer got divorced because her spouse was a serial cheater. Angelica and Carol's marriages had broken up because of irreconcilable differences. And Rose has been married to the best husband in the world for 26 years. She called him the best husband in the world several times, and every time she did, the other three nodded their heads in agreement. This is the man I must meet. The women told me that once a month they get together for a bachelorette party, so my presence there was kind of a rule breaker for Rose. But Rose suggested that if she could bring her husband to the next party, I could come too if I wanted to. The other three quickly agreed. Could I bring someone? I asked cheekily. A month later, the 6 of us gathered at the same restaurant. I met Sean, Rose's husband, and came away from that meeting thinking he might actually be the best husband in the world. We hit it off right away. The 6 of us continued to go out to eat monthly, and I started dating 3 single women as good friends. Sometimes the 4 of us would get together, and sometimes me and one of the women would even go on a date. Several of the dates ended with us having sex, sometimes making love. They were all great in bed, whichever way we did it, and I made sure each of them got everything they could from me, which always includes what I do with a woman. I really enjoy it, and I think I'm pretty good at it, and judging by the piercing ecstasies I got from all 3 of them, I think the women really enjoyed it. After about a year, Angelica and I became exclusive. I still remained good friends with Jennifer and Carol, but everyone involved understood that exclusive meant just that. Although when the girls got together, sometimes the banter could be a little rough, even for me. My kids got used to Angelica pretty quickly. My father-in-law and mother-in-law took a little longer to get used to her. I realized this and didn't insist. Having a permanent girlfriend meant that their faint hope that Tracy and I would reconcile was quickly melting away. But I think they saw the same thing I saw in Angelica. Since they and I had such a strong bond, I think it was only a matter of time before they felt natural with her and started explaining to her why I thought so highly of them. After Angelica had been to her father-in-law and mother-in-law's house 6 times, Judy took me aside and said we needed to talk. She looked as serious as a heart attack, so I was a little worried that my marital happiness was about to crumble. "Bobby, maybe I don't have the right to say this, but unfortunately I'm saying it anyway," she began. "How long have you been seeing this woman? Don't you think it's time to put a ring on her finger before someone else gets the bright idea?" I tried my best to match the serious expression on her face, but inside I was grinning from ear to ear. When your ex-mother-in-law sees this, well, I guess she was right. "You're right, Mom. I need to put that girl behind bars. I guess I was a little shy," I said. "Do it soon, big guy," she replied. About 6 weeks later, I took Angelica to a restaurant again for her 47th birthday. I had advised her on how to dress for the event, and I was pleased to see her version of a little black dress. Since Angelica couldn't get pregnant, she didn't have any pregnancies, and her body looked like a 35-year-old woman's. Her breasts hadn't sagged, and her stomach was still taut. I know she also spent a lot of time at the gym, so it wasn't just because she didn't have kids. The dress was about 15 inches above her knees and had a low neckline in the front to show off her magnificent bust. My heads were spinning all evening, and I could barely restrain myself from drooling during dinner. We both ordered cheesecake for dessert, and our waiter returned with a tray with 2 slices and a bottle of champagne on it. "We didn't order champagne," Angelica whispered to me. "We didn't order it." "I ordered it," I whispered back. "It's for drinking right after I put this ring on your finger. After Judy talked to me, I went to my favorite jeweler and asked him to make a custom diamond engagement ring for me. I thought he did a great job. Angelica must have too, because when she saw that ring, she started crying. I'm pretty sure there was a yes amongst all the sobbing. We had a simple spring wedding. Terry was my best man. Rose was Angelica's maid of honor. No, I didn't invite Tracy. Although I know it hurt Ron and Judy, I didn't consider my ex-wife a friend. We were only together when it had to do with the kids. When we were together, we had a warm relationship. But unlike some people who can get through a divorce and become true friends, I didn't. I couldn't get over the disrespect. And if you don't get over it, I don't think you really forgive. My kids eventually forgave Tracy, and I'm fine with that. She's their mother. But I don't ask about her, and my kids don't talk about her willingly. It's the same with Ron and Judy. Angelica seemed to get along pretty well with Tracy when we were all together. I don't mind, because Angelica is an independent person and can choose who she wants to be friends with. Again, we don't really talk about it. We have gotten together twice since our wedding, first for Melissa's wedding and then for Terry's wedding. In both cases, I was a very proud father and wasn't going to let anything distract from the wonderful days spent with my children. The grandchildren started showing up a couple years after they were married, and that's when I saw a side of Angelica that I never expected. While Tracy and I were thrilled to be grandparents, Grandma Angelica was just beyond thrilled. Apparently, she had a lot of maternal issues that needed to be satisfied, so to speak, and her grandchildren helped her deal with it. She was absolutely ridiculous. Tracy eventually remarried, and then divorced again, and then married a third time, and divorced a third time. Angelica told me that she thought Tracy was looking for another version of me, but just couldn't find it. She wanted me to promise her that I would never leave her. I don't have to promise you that, I replied. I made a vow to you.